I'm excited to welcome Minnesota Timberwolves assistant coach Max Lefevre to the basketball podcast. Originally from France, Max is going into his fourth season with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Max has been a video coordinator and player development coach. His focus is on player development, defense, and game prep strategy. Before the NBA, Max spent 6 years with Chris Beard from Division II Angelo State to Division I Little Rock and Texas Tech, where he's a part of the Final Four team. Max, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you having me.
Well, I got to see you present, thank you, at the BI Academy we held in Minneapolis, our basketball immersion coaching clinic. And, Ruth Sin, John Tower, Ben Johnson, Doug Novak, myself, and everyone left buzzing about you and your presentation. And then I was so fortunate, thank you, Alex Saram and I got to watch you at Summer League practice. And again, Alex and I just left, like we were just so impressed. And I said, I got to do the podcast sooner than later. So thanks for joining us.
I appreciate you, man. It's an honor being here. Big fan of the podcast. So anything about sharing the game is always good.
Well, sharing the game, we will. And we're going to dive into the NBA defenses. And that's what I had a chance to see you do in both those settings. And I know a lot of this for you started with a study, and that's the attributes of the best defense. So maybe outline that first before we dive deep.
Yeah, so the way I kind of looked at it was look at what the best defenses are good at and, trying to see if there was any common things coming out of that. And there were, most of the good defensive team are very good in transition defense. They're very good at guarding 3-point line and very good at protecting the paint. A couple of things that kind of came out that I wasn't really expecting was that the free throw rate, or I guess how much you foul, does not have much impact on how good your defense is. I mean, some of these top 5 NBA teams, some of them were really good at not fouling, and some of them fouled a lot. And the other thing was that, it's all about how well you can guard the three, but not like a lot of these good teams give up a lot of threes, and some of them give up not that many threes. So there's not really a correlation between how many threes you give up, but the important thing is how good you can contest those threes. So that's kind of what the presentation is based on, really, is just because now we're looking at what the best teams do best and trying to emulate that.
And for you, this directs your philosophy of defense, but maybe just let's go to the other side of the ball quick. How does it influence your offensive philosophy, knowing these things?
Yeah, I mean, obviously transition is key offensively as well. It's the most efficient offense in basketball, right? So about every team that ever played is more efficient in open court and half court. So trying to get as many open look in transition as we can, and looking to get to the rim and to the free throw line, as those are the most efficient shots on the court, and then looking for open threes, which kind of comes next, and trying to stay away from as much mid-range as possible. And obviously defensively, you're trying to flip that and protect the paint, contest threes, and trying to give them as many mid-range twos as they want to take, as long as they're contested.
So transition defense is obviously so important. And, you mentioned this, that, there a lot of teams do have some different rules in transition, but just as a whole, what are some of the most important things in the NBA in terms of transition defense?
Yeah, to me personally, I think getting back on the shot and sprinting back on the shot is like, it sounds simple, but like if you could give me 2 teams and one of them has all these bells and whistles about transition defense, they got all these rules, but they don't really sprint out of the gate. And one team that has absolutely no rule, but just sprint out of the gate every time, I would think the one that sprint out of the gate is going to be better in transition defense than the other one. So, it's hard because you're fighting human nature. The shot goes up and you want to look at the ball, and there's kind of a lag time in between. But if you can get your team to actually sprint back, like first 3 steps are always huge. If you can sprint back in those first 3 steps as soon as the ball leaves the shooter's hand, you're gonna be in great shape. And then from there, if we are saying is get 5 guys below the ball, so if you get 5 guys looking at the basketball and get in front of it, from there you should be in good shape. There's other rules that come into play. Last man will go weak side, and things like that. You want to load to the basketball, but again, all those things are really irrelevant if you don't get back on the shot, because you don't have time to set up your defense and do all these other things.
And a lot of the variability in philosophy relates to offensive rebounding philosophies as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Some teams like to just send almost 5 back and just start the transition defense that way. Kind of depends on personnel and what your philosophy is there. But if you're gonna crash the glass a little more, you're gonna expose yourself a little more in transition defense, which means that those guys that are getting back definitely have to be really good at getting back on the shot and kind of starting your transition defense while other guys are crashing.
Well, at the summer league practice, we saw you work on, and we saw you use the term sandwich box out. So I got to ask you to explain that, because that was pretty cool to be able to see you guys working on that.
Yeah, I mean, rebounding is another key that, to defense. Mark Adams, who I worked for at Texas Tech, was a defensive coordinator, used to say is the most important part of defense. And at first it didn't click with me, but if you think about it, the shot goes up and you did all these things, and it really doesn't matter what you did if you can't get the rebound. So it is the most important part of defense. And I think when the shot goes up, it's just everybody has a job to do. Like when the shot goes up, you should never watch. There's always something for you to do. Obviously, if you're big, you're going to be in there banging and boxing out. But guards, it's different philosophies. But if you can go to the nail, but the sandwich box out is really those guards kind of coming back down and getting 2-on-1 on some of these bigger offensive rebounders. If there's a really good offensive rebounder, or maybe there's a mismatch down there if you're switching and you got a smaller guy on a bigger guard, and just basically sandwiching that guy between two people where he really can't jump. So that's where the term comes from.
Well, and that is taking advantage in the sense that a lot of teams are sending so many people back in transition that you do have this advantage on the defensive boards. So this sandwich concept works, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's great stuff. Now, getting into the core concepts and some of the different things that I know your study brought out for you, and is a big part of the philosophy of how NBA defense works. And we'll start with the first core defensive concept, which is support. Heavy nail, high nail. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. The biggest thing we talked about, protecting the paint, right? Trying to take away rim opportunities for the other team. So to be able to do that, unless you have an elite shot blocker, you're gonna have to, commit people to help and support. And we use the term support more than help. Just kind of like, help you kind of in a bad spot and you need help. Support, you're just kind of supporting your teammate, but that's just kind of a choice of word there. But the nail is, obviously the area right around the free throw line, in the middle of the floor, and we're trying to load that area to where drive to the middle are obviously really impactful offensively. So trying to get guys heavy at the nail just means like really committed to be at the nail and make that driver kick the basketball out. And then high nail is, if you look at the nail really just at the free throw line, right, and you're trying to stop that drive there, and then the ball is kicked out to the opposite wing, it's really, really hard to get back. It's just a long way. So the higher you can be, just picture the nail at the free throw line and take a couple of steps up. And the better the shooter you're guarding on the other side, probably the higher you want to be. Just because it's just easier to get back. You can stop the ball earlier and then get back out quicker to that shooter. And again, we stop the ball to get to the paint, but now we have to contest threes at a high level. So that's kind of heavy nail and high nail stuff.
Well, I love that idea of support rather than help, and help is too late. And it's a defensive situation in that sense that you're trying to prevent. And this builds into one-way closeouts. And we'll talk about closeouts a little bit more detail, but particularly with this concept, right? One-way closeouts.
Yeah. So I think it's important to be there early, right? So the earlier you can be there and you help, the earlier you can get out. And one-way closeout, it just means that if you're there early, when the ball is kicked out, you can just go one way back to whoever you guarded where the ball is going to. But if you come in as the ball is driven, and then have to go back out, that would be a two-way closeout. So now your body's going one direction as the ball is driven, and by the time it's kicked out, all your momentum is going to the ball. It's impossible to get back. So be there super early, present yourself, arms out, be big, and then get back out as soon as you can, and just kind of load up that inside leg, just push out instead of going two ways, which is just too slow.
And if a player is not early enough, so they do have to move in more to help, and it would become a two-way closeout. In those situations, do we tell them not to bother helping then, or are they still supposed to help, or is that a decision?
It kind of depends on personnel at times and how good is that player, how good of a shooter you're guarding on the wing. But more times than not, we rather be more aggressive than not. and just kind of, if you just keep getting there and trying to get back out as much as you can and as hard as you can and contest that three, or there might be a stunt on the other side or full rotation at that point, kind of get the other part of your defense going. But the ball is what scores, right? So we want to stop the basketball as early as possible, and if it's late, it's better than not. So.
That's great. And, I've dove into the biomechanics, so this wasn't a surprise, but a lot of coaches, the way you presented it in this concept of no choppy steps. So let's talk about that on closeouts, no choppy steps. And you referenced that that's one of the things that you have to change from college players coming to the NBA.
Yeah, I think if you talk to sports performance people, they would tell you that it's not the best way to actually stop and go back in a different direction. It's kind of one of those things that people have been doing for a very long time, and it kind of seems like it makes sense. And when I was a player, I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But if you really look at it, it's not the best way. So we just close out all the way and then stop at that point. But really, if you the thing is that, we're trying to stop the basketball from being in the paint and people scoring at the rim, which means you're gonna have to commit some people to the paint, which is gonna make those closeout longer. And then we're trying to take away threes, and the only way to take away threes is to run at people. And by chopping your feet on a long closeout and then trying to put a hand up, at this level, I think at most level, really, that shot is going up, and you don't really have much impact on the shot at that point. So we're more worried about contesting the three than just trying to stay in front of basketball. Obviously, you're still trying to stay in front of basketball if it's driven, but taking away the threes are just more important than anything. So we want to run people off the line, and that's the best way to do it. And then as far as contests go, we try to teach right to right or left to left. So your right hand contesting by the right hand of the shooter, and if it's a left hand shooter, the other way. It's not always perfect, but the biggest thing here, I think, is to understand, to be able to contest shot at a high level, you're gonna have to jump to the side of people. If you jump right in front, one, you're taking a chance at fouling and landing in that shooter's space, right? And then you can't get close enough. So a lot of times it's just better to just run and just kind of jump on the side. It gets you a better contest. And then if they shot fake and trying to relocate and stay by the 3-point line, you can get a second effort and kind of contest from behind. But the chopping your feet, put your hand up and contesting the shot from in front of the shooter is just too slow.
And talk a little bit more detail then. What is actually the terminology, or how do you actually explain it to a player that you need to develop their defensive concept and, let's say, break that choppy step habit?
Yeah, we basically tell them to close out to the touch, and that's all the way up, and just run at the player and just break down in the stance at that point, right? And then if he's going to shoot at that point, you're just going to jump and you're going to contest to the side. It's like you said, it's hard for guys coming out of college. But it takes reps and some player development. You can work on some defensive stuff as well and just kind of rep those closeouts. You don't have to do all offense. And that sounds like a basic thing, but that's a huge thing, as big as shot contests in the NBA. Like Coach Finch was saying, and it just makes sense. It's just the level of your defense is really the level of contestedness you can bring, right? So if you can really contest shots at a high level, your defense is going to be pretty good.
And these breakdown steps. And again, I can tell coaches to watch young people, or, even get your players to play tag. And when you watch them move, when they're running and stopping and changing direction, they're never chopping their steps. So it's not natural. They would just never do that intuitively on their own. So why are we teaching something they don't intuitively do?
Exactly. Yeah, it's not natural. And if you actually look at like some of the best defenders, and you just study how they guard and how they contest shot, they will never chop their feet. They're just running out people and contesting shot, or running out people, stopping and trying to cut them off. But you'll never see really good defenders do that.
Yeah, they run as fast as you can and stop as fast as you can is how a performance coach explained it.
That's something that you can work on, and just weight room or just sports performance and stuff like that. How good can you stop, and how good can you stop and go? It's just, that's something that's huge in the NBA, offensively and defensively. Like, can you really stop and go on a dime and change speed? And that's something that's impactful on both ends of the court.
And back to this running them off the line concept, it's the whole goal is to make them play more in the mid range, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to run them off. So basically, if you're gonna run them off the line, that means somewhere at some point you help, right? And you're closing back out to somebody. So you stop them from scoring in the paint, and then you're closing back out. Now you're taking the three away, and then they're gonna drive it again, hopefully, and then you're gonna help again, and trying to at some point they're gonna have to take a mid-range shot. That's kind of the perfect situation for you, right?
And the other phrasing that I love that you shared when you presented this at the BI Academy was willing to leave everything to go contest a shot. And it just spoke to the importance of contesting the shot, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that can be a little unnatural. You know, you rotate, and kind of get an open shot, and it's like you kind of watch it and look at it. And if you're really good, and I've got really good athletes, obviously, but if you just, even if you in the paint when they catch the basketball, it's still time to just run out and just do something. Something is better than nothing. So just don't feel like you always have to like at any point have to just stop and watch a shot. Like that's a big no-no. Like just give it one effort, just one run at somebody can make a difference. So you'll see the good teams that are really good at contesting threes. They just keep rotating and keep rotating. Yeah. And there's always an extra effort, just multiple efforts going on trying to get back to shooters.
So a right-handed shooter, we're going to contest them with our right hand, and that's your terminology of right to right, and then obviously left to left. So I'm curious, the NBA definitely has changed a lot in terms of a player who is getting run off the line. They aren't driving the ball like they used to. They're resetting to try and shoot, right? So talk to us about how that recovery works, and then in terms of that player that says go right to right, and then they try and recover.
Yeah, so if you run somebody up the line, and they're trying to basically shot fake and just sidestep and stay behind the 3-point line. First of all, that's a lower percentage shot overall than just a catch and shoot three. So you did some of your job, but it comes back to multiple effort. Now you come back down. So by the time you come down and they dribble to the side, you should be somewhere right behind them, and you can contest from behind, and you're probably not going to block that shot, but you can put a contest and make them feel you. And make that shot a lot harder shot. But that's definitely the kind of what offenses are going to try to do instead of driving it right back at you, especially for good shooters. But as long as you can run them off the line and give them a second effort, you're doing your job.
This is fun to get into this detail of it. And, obviously the next part of that is, say it's a right to right. And this may happen more at college, high school, youth level, is right to right. And now the player drives to score after. What are we doing on the back end in terms of trying to support that player that now ran the player off the line and now the ball's driving to score?
Yeah. So now you just back to basically the beginning, but they have less time on the clock, right? So they're gonna drive it again, and then somebody else, should have a low man or somebody coming to help on the basketball, and then the goal is to make them kicking back out. That's gonna be another closeout, and it just keep on going and going. And at our level, there's only 24 seconds, so it goes by quick. But basically, the way I like to put it is you banking on your rotation and your effort better than the other team's ball movement. It sounds like it'd be easy to beat, but a lot of teams drive it one time, make a pass, and take a semi-contested three, or they might drive it twice, right? But if you can have multiple efforts and just keep going, at some point, they're going to take a contested shot, or the ball is going to end up in the hands of somebody that just not a very good playmaker and is bound to make a mistake. So you're just banking on your aggressiveness and how good your rotations and your efforts are. Being better than the other team just moving the basketball. So it's just a constant fight every drive and every possession.
So I want to dive into rotations and get into some of those concepts. Before we do, one of the other core principles that you share is arms out. So let's talk about arms out first.
Yeah, I think it's just a small thing, but it just has a big impact. Basketball player, a lot of them have good length, and you're just so much bigger when you just have your arms out. If you get at that heavy nail, high nail, and you have your arms out and somebody's driving, it's just the presence. You just have a lot more presence, a lot more impact. And really your feet are in the same position, but you just take a lot more room on the court and kind of close those areas. They just look more crowded to the offensive players. So a lot of that is perception. These arms are probably not really going to do much. I mean, you can swipe at it when they come through, but the biggest thing is perception. And what do they see when they come through that on that drive, right? They see somebody big with their arms out that might swipe at the basketball. They're more likely to kick it out if you got your arms right next to you, and it just look like a whole ocean right there.
Such a simple concept, and that's the perception's right on. And we tend to talk about it a lot, say in zone defense, but not as much in man-to-man for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's key to a good defense for sure.
And coming back now we're trying to cover the drive, we're trying to get into rotations. Let's start with the corner help concept, because again, this used to be really a taboo, and it is for some teams to not help off the ball side corner. But yeah, I think you talk about 60-100.
Yeah, that's the term we use. It's basically 60-100 means 60% towards the ball, but 100% committed to the corner. So again, we want you there. We want you big. We want your arms out. We want a lot of presence when that ball is driving from the slot and you guard in the corner. At the end of the day, we don't want you to just give up a wide open corner three, which is one of the most highest percentage shot in the league. But we want presence. All right. So 60% towards the ball, you're there, but 100% you're gonna get back to the shooter at some point. Now there's some exceptions to that. Obviously, if you're guarding a below average to non-shooter in the corner, which might not happen a lot, but you can full body help at that point and stop the basketball. And then whoever is guarding the basketball can actually rotate to the corner into some kind of pill switching things or fly switch, whatever goes, whatever people call those. So you can do that, but just because we say no corner threes and don't help from the corner doesn't mean that you're not showing presence and being big in that area. If you can just get guys to pick the ball up at that point and just earlier, the earlier the better, then you've done your job. It just makes your rotation easier on the back end.
Especially important on an NBA court because of the spacing. And let's just give coaches a visual. So someone's on the slot, they're driving the ball to the outside. Your 60% is in help, but you want them to recover to their check. Now, if they can't recover to their check, then that player will full stop the ball and then will peel switch, go. I think you said a blow by type of switch.
Yeah. So whoever's guarding a basketball, if that corner guy helping is checking it, we'll just keep on going basically to that guy in the corner. And that's kind of a natural thing that happens. I know some teams teach it, but if you just play hard and just keep rotating, guys will just figure out on their own. They're like, okay, my guy got stopped by somebody else. Where's the next guy, right? So, I think that's a concept you can talk about. Some teams do it more than others, but it's something that happens a lot naturally as well if you just play hard and just committed to stopping the basketball.
Do these two-player rotations, because these are essentially two-player rotations, do they happen in other situations on the court?
They can happen in other situations. They can happen on different drives. The one to the corner is kind of the easiest one and the most frequent that you'll see, just because the space there is somewhat smaller and you can kind of make that happen pretty fast. But it might happen in some pick and roll situation and a lot of other situations. People call it different things at that time, but same concept. But I think that outside drive from the slot is one that you'll see a lot.
And then if it becomes 3 or 4 player rotations, then it gets into some X outs first. Let's start with the simplest concept. So talk to us about X out rotations.
Yeah. So if you think about slot drive again to the outside, and you have somebody 60-100 in the corner. Again, their job is not to stop the basketball, it's just to be a presence. So who is going to stop the basketball, right? So then your low man sitting right underneath the rim should be coming over and stopping the basketball. And then whoever is guarding the opposite slot is going to have to play, we call it just play two, right? So he's going to have to guard the corner, or he's going to have to guard the slot. So whatever first pass goes, he goes. So and then from there, you're going to have to X out. So let's say drive from the slot outside, low man is committed, the ball is kicked to the corner. That guy in the opposite slot would take the corner, and then low man would then get back out. Kind of an X that's why it's called X out. I guess basically it's just kind of a X pattern with those two guys kind of rotating.
Yeah, and they're switching checks, so you're not recovering to your own check as part of that.
Right. At that point, you getting back to somebody else. Now, if the ball is driven, same thing outside, and the ball is kicked to the slot, then that guy that's playing two would actually get back to his own man because it's the first pass, and then the low man would get back to his own man in the corner, and we just tell him to get back. You basically got two passes to get back at that point. right? So if you're the low man, you stop the basketball, the ball is kicked to the wing. Whoever was playing two is getting back to that man. You have to get back to the corner in 2 passes.
And then diving deeper and sharing a little bit more about the peel switch is essentially, this is the concept now that instead of trying to recover to your check or try and drive it into a double, you're getting away early. You're getting off your check early because you know help's there, right?
Yeah, and at that point, if it's a blow by and you just basically done, right? And somebody else has to full body help on the basketball, you just got to find out the next rotation. And you can try to diagram it and just go through shell and make it perfect. By the end of the day, a lot of things going to happen. So you just got to scramble and just, I like to call it near man concept, just get back to the next guy and just keep on rotating, right? So just have to figure out situations from there. And if you're going to run that type of defense and be aggressive and run people off the line and be early with your low man, you're going to be scrambling a lot. So it's something you definitely have to get really good at.
Well, I know it's something, I know you talk a lot about scramble and collapsing and some different terms like that. And it's also one of the reasons, and I know you're a fan of this as well, is that defense comes down to decision making as much as offense does, in terms of individual defenders making decisions and their teammates knowing how to cover for their decision or support their decision.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I think we tell our guys, like, the earlier you can help, the better, because now it makes it obvious for the next person on what their job is, right? If you help at the last second, then there's just much less time for that next person to rotate. So if you can just help early and communicate, then the next person knows what to do, and it's just kind of a chain reaction, and you can get your rotations going from there. But if you do it late, that's when you get in trouble.
What is a fly switch then?
It's basically the same concept, just people calling it different things, peel switching, fly switching, goes, people just different terms for the same thing.
Okay, I've heard the term and I wasn't sure if that was all the same thing. So that's great in terms of that. And then some of the other terms that you use, which I want you to share some insights on. One is directional. What does directional mean relative to the defense?
Yeah, I think it's more like in ISO situations. NBA players are obviously really good offensively, and when you get stuck on an island, even with help, I think even as good as these players are, they're always better going one way or the other. Some elite guys are just almost impossible to stop either way, but most guys have a very dominant hand. So it's just if you get stuck in a ISO situation with them, just sending them to the hand that they like the least, and just everybody kind of knowing that and building some help towards that direction. So you basically send one way, influencing that more than sending. Sending kind of, again, choice of word, but sending is more like, okay, I'm opening the gate. Influence is more like, okay, I'm just sending you that way, but I'm still keeping you in front. But just, sending them a direction, the one direction they don't like to go, and building help, in that area to force them that way into some help.
So be directional relates to scouting report. Does that relate to closeouts on the ball as well? Are you trying to be directional, or are you trying to be square first?
You can try to be directional on closeouts. That's a little harder to do. Hopefully, some guys are, if you can, somebody you want to send him left, and you can close out and just open up to their left hand, especially guys that are not very good at putting the basketball on the floor. But overall, when it comes to close out, I think the biggest thing is just get him off the 3-point line and make him drive it again. If you can make him drive into where they're not as good, then great. But I don't think it's just the most important thing there. I think it's more important more in ISO situation, or just basically just drive situations.
Great. And then another concept is verticality. And before you get into verticality, is this something that applies at all levels of basketball? I know, having watched many NBA practices, this is a huge thing.
I think it applies, at every level. I think absolutely. And I think a lot of times when people think about rim protection, they think about shot blocking. And I think you can have great rim protection without a shot blocker. There's other ways to protect the rim, again, by being early. You can take charges, which is even more impactful than a block shot. Or, if you get stuck late, you can just jump. Verticality is basically jumping straight up, both hands up, and just taking it in the chest. And that's a big point, because a lot of guys like to jump and then just kind of jump sideways and then let the offense get through. But if you really look at finishing at all levels, and even in the NBA, there's a lot of guys that struggle to finish around contact or around length. So if you can just jump straight up and give them that look where they just have to finish around you, a lot of times those are misses. Even if you don't touch them and they just have to just go around you or they jump, it's just a lot harder to finish. So that's a huge thing. Just take it in the chest, jump straight up, and make them shoot over you. And those are low percentage finishes.
I know officials make mistakes, and I know that's a shock at all levels. But the one thing about the verticality rule is that it's definitely much better officiated at the NBA level. They spend a lot of time educating coaches, players, officials about this rule, right? Whereas at a lot of other levels, it seems so inconsistent about whether it's called or not.
Yeah, it's a big thing for officials. I would say that they still get it wrong a lot, even in the NBA. But the biggest point of emphasis here is kind of point A to point A is what they call A to B. Basically, wherever you jump from is where you should land, right? But if you jump from one area and end up in another, basically jumping sideways or forward, that's why you get called for a foul. As long as you just jump straight up and down, you should be fine. You can't bring your arms down. That's another no-no that will get you automatic call from the referee. Just straight up, A to A, hands up. Some people like to say, elbows behind your ears or whatever. Teaching point is different ways to do it. But the biggest thing is you have to be straight up. Yeah.
And I saw Stan Van Gundy with the Pistons. I mean, a few training camps, a few practices I saw, and they worked on this concept almost every time I went to see it in some form or other, whether it was part of a group or as part of player breakdown type drills. I imagine that's the same with your roster.
Yeah, and definitely you can work on it practice, you can work on it on player development, again, some defensive component that you can kind of touch on every day. And there's really a technique to it, but guys that are really good are just really good rim protector. Again, you don't have to be a shot blocker to do it. And it is very, very effective.
That's great stuff. And I think at the college level, a lot of coaches call that walling up.
Yeah. So the difference for us, to me, walling up is basically doing that without jumping. You just basically straight up and kind of just clamp that guy there, which is good. The biggest thing at the NBA level is you cannot do that inside a restricted area. Right. So if you do that inside the restricted area, it's an automatic foul. So you'd have to, if you're in a restricted area, you have to jump. Right. So that's when verticality really comes into play. If you can stop the basketball before that, by all means, build that wall and wall up is great.
Good. I wanted to make sure we covered that because I know some people think it's the same and it's not in terms of that. And then, the best defenses obviously combine all these concepts. And, that's when you're starting to say, run them off the line into a peel switch, into an X out, and all these things get combined. And can you talk a little bit about how you practice to be able to get players to be able to combine all these sequences?
I think you got to put guys in those situations. And I think, wherever you give the offense an advantage to start like a slot drive where the defense is going to get beat and then you have to get into his rotations. I think disadvantage drill defensively are huge, whether it's 4-on-3 or 5-on-4, where you just have to figure out, you obviously one man down, you have to get to the next guy, you have to rotate. And it's just a mindset, just obviously film study and emphasizing that. But I think that's something you work on basically every day. Like I think you should work on pick and roll every day, and I think you should work on basically scrambling out of situations every day. Those are two things that, on top of transition, which you can always work on live every day. But those are things that should happen every day.
Well, we knew we had to get into ball screen, and you already mentioned it. And let's start with I think one of the most important modern concepts, and that's cancel the screen.
Yeah. So to me, I think. If you look at pick and roll defense, and it used to be that way, it's kind of changing, but people think, okay, that's the big's job. Okay, the guard's going to get screened and the ball's going to get to the big, and he has to handle this pick and roll situation. We talk about all the coverage you can think about, but I think the guard has to take responsibility and ownership in the pick and roll. Like if you can't cancel the screen, which basically means just not getting screened, and there's different ways to do that. If you pressure the ball, get into the ball, and the guard can't even get close to the pick and roll, well, that's one way. If you can just get over the top of it, just basically don't get screened. Now, the screen doesn't happen. You don't have to put two on the basketball. The big doesn't have to help. And now you're in great shape, right? You got a ball handler on the pressure, and basically everybody's covered. So, I think, again, the guard has to take responsibility, and the really good guards, really good defensive guards, just basically would tell you, like, I don't need help. I can cover that all by myself. And those are the really good ones. And it takes a lot of effort and being some technical part of that as well. But that's what the best can do.
So talk to us a little bit about some of that technique. Get into the ball and war over.
Yeah, so you can't send the ball anywhere. The first thing, you can't get refused, right? That's the one thing that you don't want to do in pick and roll, because there's no help on the other side. And offensively, flip that. You should always try to refuse pick and roll, but you can't get refused. That means we have to, whether you're not trying to get refused, send the basketball to the screen, or you just weaken it or strong in it, being directional in the pick and roll, which we can get to our later point. But you're basically sending a direction, and you can't do that unless you into the basketball. You can't send anybody anywhere unless you have pressure on them to send them a direction. So that's the first thing. And then the different techniques, I think, I know you probably upload some videos at some point. That'd be easier to kind of see. But if you can just get over the screen, but if it's a stationary screen, a stationary ball handler, those are the easiest one. You can get that top foot, the one closer to the pick and roll, to the screen over, and it's basically slide over that screen and just not get screen. When it gets harder is like when everything is in movement. Somebody like a ball handler is dribbling towards a pick and roll, and now you kind of have to basically get on a guy's hip and jump around the screen, and you're gonna get trying to get back in front. But there's different techniques that you can use. The biggest thing is still getting into the ball. I think that's just the number one thing. If you can do that, especially even at lower levels where ball handlers might not be as good, I think that's a lot. It's going to cancel a lot of ball screen just by having ball pressure.
Now, I saw you apply something similar in the summer league practice, and you didn't call it cancel, but you said stop, and it was basically the same concept in a way that teams were running pistol against you, and you wanted to stop pistols from even happening. So I love that concept. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we call it stop sign, and basically, the 21 pistol action is just a guard step up right along the sideline. You can do a regular step up as well if you want to, a regular angle pick and roll, the screen kind of going to the sideline. But what you're trying to do there is basically just force the basketball to the middle, so away from the screen. So it's kind of like the opposite of bluing it or icing it. You're just trying to send it away from where the screen comes from, but it's really the same idea. And what that does is basically take away basically all the options of that pistol series, or a lot of them. And same thing with pick and roll. You can just send it there and have your help sitting there, and that's not what people are trying to get to when they run this step up pick and roll. So again, it's trying to take away from the offense, and what they take away what they're trying to do. Trying to be aggressive first, and then deal with what they want to do next, but make them do something else.
The more I saw it and thought about it, I love the idea, because instead of defending a 3-player action in pistols, you're essentially defending a 2-player. And then the other concept is, instead of it going to open space, it's going to more help, right? There's more support if you're canceling it or sending it to the,
especially in a pistol, because you should have a big at the top of the key, right? So if you send it to the middle, you basically have that big sit right there, and there's nowhere to go, which is another concept that we call center, and it's basically the same thing. You just send the basketball to the middle of the floor where all your help is. You should have a lot of support. Whereas the big there's somebody on the other wing. I mean, if you load it to the basketball, there's a lot of people to get through if the ball goes to the middle.
And the big is essentially playing drop coverage there. That's the mindset of that.
Yeah, at that point, it's just basically supporting. And again, there's so much traffic that it shouldn't be much, anywhere to go. But yeah, he's basically supporting that. A lot of that happens kind of early in the flow of the offense. So it's hard to be very aggressive in pick and roll as the ball gets down the floor early, as you're trying to build up your defense. So yeah, the big is basically like supporting that, and kind of in a bend but don't break kind of philosophy there.
Before we get into the big and the 2-player defending actions in the pick and roll, so talk to us a little bit more about the player on the ball. So say they did get beat, or they're trying to recover. You talk about pursue and then rear view contest or rear contest, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Once you get hit, or at some point, if you get over the top, you might be stuck on the guy's hip. We call it pursue, and just get back in front, right? So you want to pursue the ball handler. And just get back in front of the basketball as much as you can. You want to do that with, high hands, and trying to take away passing angles as well. And then if he does, kind of pull up in the mid range, then, you can contest from behind. And as your big is kind of dropping back if you're in a drop coverage. But review contest is huge. Again, you want other team to take mid-range shots, but you want them to be contested. All right, just because they take a mid-range shot doesn't mean that it's over. Right? You want them as contested as possible as well.
It's great. And one of the terms that I adapted from you after I saw you is presentation, which is, again, I get asked this a lot about how to teach drop and these different types of coverages. And I love that term for the big presentation. Can you dive into that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that is, again, perception. I think, when the guard comes off and you see a big in a stance with his arms out, and that's what we call presentation. It's basically being a stance with your arms out. It just looked like somebody that's ready to play defense instead of kind of a big on his heel with his, hands by his side and just kind of softly going back. Now, a good guard's going to look at that and just go right at that big. But guards coming off and looking at somebody with great presentation, they're going to think about it twice and get you big in a stance ready to kind of react to other things as well. So I think it's huge. The first part is probably communication. You want to tell the guard whatever you coverage you in, what direction we send it to. So you want to do that. And then your presentation, again, is huge. What does the player see when it comes out of that pick and roll?
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And then of course, like, we don't want the big to help. And you talk about stunt, in terms of that concept of the big. We don't want them to help, but we want them to stunt. And, stunt contest, I think, is the term you use.
Yeah. And that's something that we've done. Is just basically, as you're dropping back, you don't want to lunge at the basketball. But again, these guards are so good coming off and so used to playing against drop coverage. You want to give them something to think about, whether it's just basically a stab at the basketball while going back. Again, you can't lunge forward and do that, you'll get beat. But just if you get the guard to kind of hesitate and pick up the basketball, it just buys you maybe half a second for that guard to get back in front, or maybe picks up the ball and throws it early, and your other rotations are easier. So that's kind of the mindset there.
So the guard's trying to get over themselves. They're trying to make the screen not a screen. That's cancel the screen. And the big's in presentation. But if the guard, the handler now gets to the screen and now the guard has to try and recover, the big presentation goes to stunt contest. What's their next level of help in terms of if it's needed?
Yeah. So at that point, the big's job is to keep the basketball in front. You want to keep the ball in front. You can't get beat. And if you're in a deep drop, your other job is to not get the roller get behind you. Right. So you can play that pick and roll 2-on-2 if you're in kind of a deep drop situation, to where everybody kind of stay at home. And then I think what you have to understand is, like, when guards start pulling up in the mid range, as the big, it's not your job to contest that. Right. Is the guards. That's why review contest is so important, because if you picture that the guard's kind of coming off, and let's say he gets to the elbow or wherever mid-range area, and he start pulling up and the big contest that shot, well, the roller is just rolling straight to the rim, and it's easy offensive rebound if it's a miss, right? So you want the guard to be able to get back and review contest, and the big to get back to the big, to put a bigger body on a bigger body and trying to contest that. Now, if the big is engaged all the way, right, the guards keep coming at him. At that point, you have to do what we call veer back, and it's basically a switch at that point, and the guard have to reroute and get into the big's legs, and the big at that point will contest the shot if it's more like a floater or kind of a rim attempt.
And veer out, that's when you'll get into triple switching if needed as well, in terms of big supporting the guard at the rim so the guard doesn't have to cover them.
Yeah, at some point, you should have somebody in that area that can, if the shot goes up, that might be a sandwich box out opportunity, or that might be a big getting back on a big and the guard getting back out. A lot of times it happens fast, right? So the shot goes up, the small just have to, fight his butt off. You have to get to the big's legs, kind of terminology there, trying to make it hard for him to jump and just push him out as much as possible.
Two other concepts that go in terms of, especially off the ball, and it comes back to perception, is you want to fan out to shooters, but at the same time, you want to make it seem like there's a crowd or make them play in a crowd. So can you talk about those two things?
Yeah, it's you want to stop them from getting a rim attempt, and two, so you have to commit people to the paint. And then when you have to what we call read drives as well. Some of these drives are kind of like non-threatening drives. They kind of go in east-west and not straight to the rim. So on those, you kind of want to read those and get back to the shooter. Again, talked about the decision making that comes with defense, as you said earlier. So you want to read those drives and trying to get back to shooters if it's a non-threatening drives. And that's when you start fanning out. But also, don't do, like, it's not like you want to do that too much, because you're still trying to contest. You still want to stop the rim, and then you want to get back out and contest threes. But it's more of a read and kind of cat and mouse game of just seeing how aggressive that drive is, and is that guy beat too? You got to read. Yeah, read where's the drive going, where's the defender, is he really beat or not, and then do you have to kind of full body help at that point, or can you just get back to shooters?
Yeah, and I'm curious how you teach that, how you coach that. Is that through a lot of video and a lot of understanding for players? I mean, the difference between heavy support and light support.
Yeah, I think video is a great tool there. Be like, okay, this driver right here is kind of non-threatening, is to West. We could get back here. A good job getting back. Whatever happened in that situation, you kind of work on it in like some 2-on-2 settings. Kind of small-sided games, or 3-on-3. We just kind of read those drives and just get better at it. And then it's also like, is it a mismatch? Is it a really good driver? Is it is you big switched on a guard? Like, well, at that point you're probably not going to fan out. But is it like a quicker guy on somebody that's just not as fast with the basketball? Then you probably already know that you can, you're there, but in your mind you know that you probably can be able to get back out. So again, just kind of thinking the game on a defensive end.
How does a ghost screen change? Or does it change anything in terms of defensive philosophy that you're outlining here?
Yeah, there's kind of two ways to guard the ghost screen, right? One is, kind of the no screen, no scheme kind of thing. Just like if it doesn't touch you, there's no screen, stay what you want. If there's a screen, switch it. And some people will do that. But the biggest thing there just creates a lot of confusion, in my opinion. So what we started switching all of it, whether it's a screen or we kind of come close or not. It's just a switch. You have to be able to kind of be physical with the screener and kind of redirect him and put your hands on him, which you might not be able to do at every level. But basically everything comes close and not screen, counter screen is all a switch. So it kind of takes away some of that confusion. Now teams will get obviously trying to counter that by like not even coming close, and now it's really hard to switch because there's a lot of separation. What we end up doing in the playoff with Memphis at that point is we went back to the no screen, kind of no scheme thing, because they just kept using that. But as in a regular season, as kind of a philosophy was just switch everything, and then you can adjust from that.
That's also because a lot of teams are just doing touch rolls. I mean, they're not actually setting the ball screen, even when they're running a ball screen.
Yeah, exactly. They're just basically touching and pulling out. They're just touching and going. So, and at that point, they're just touching and rolling. You have to try to get under that, which can be hard. But that's why, again, if you can redirect the screener and be physical with the screener, you just don't want to let the screener run up there just freely to where they can now create space. But if you kind of go up there with the screener, put your hands on him, basically push him to the switch. Now that space gets smaller and it's easier to switch.
So any insights in terms of pocket pass to the short roll and the responsibilities or reactions that happen from there?
Yeah. So if the ball gets, into the short roll, if your big is beat, then your low man should be your next layer of defense, and then you would end up Xing out. We talked about earlier from there. If you're in a deep drop, the big should be able to kind of get back to the big at that point. But yeah, it kind of depends on what coverage you're in at that point. But if the ball gets to the pocket and it's coming to the rim, your low man is probably going to be your next line of defense.
Your preferred Spain pick and roll defense?
Oh, man. We're talking about all the technicalities.
Let's say it's your perfect situation.
Yeah, so the Spain pick and roll, what NBA people call the stack action. The best way if you're going to drop coverage to me is to switch the two guards. So whoever's guarding the screener would jump out and get the basketball, and then whoever's was on the ball would just take out the guy kind of popping out of the stack or Spain action. And then the big would just kind of roll underneath that screen so it doesn't try not to get screened. It basically keeps the body on the body at that point and take things away. What people will start doing is just start slipping out very early, which make it a little harder to switch. You'll take some communication. And, you know, at some point, if they just keep doing that, you might have to just stay. If they're trying to exploit it that way, it's just an adjustment. What we started doing this year is where we're more aggressive in pick and roll, more in what we call high wall, which is basically a flat hedge, you know, taking the ball to the sideline. So if you do that, that kind of takes away basically the span action as well. But it's hard to do, like, because you don't always see it. So that's not you covered. It's not like you'd be like, well, it'd be great to just trap every span action, right? Because then you can just put two people on a basketball and your low man can take care of the big rolling. But it's hard to see it coming. So, but our defensive coverage was aggressive, so kind of took it away that way. If you're more in a drop, I would say switch the guard is the best way to do it.
And then with handoffs, is it pretty similar to the ball screen philosophy in terms of guarding handoffs?
Yeah, you know, a lot of times the big is basically in the same coverage. The guard will give them the option with most people. We call it fastest route, and just trying to navigate as best as you can. You know, if you take fastest route, doesn't mean easiest route, doesn't mean like go under every time, right? It's just, you know, try to get over. If you're in a good position to get under, what you can do is just have no pressure on that guy and just kind of go under softly. If you're going to go under, you want to basically go under at the last second. You want to be just very, very physical. In the last second, you can jump under. But the big's responsibilities are very similar. But we give the guard a little freedom there to guard that action, because there might be some other action before that might make them late, where it's really, really hard to keep chasing that. So, but yeah, and then, you know, kind of differentiate dribble handoff and handoffs. Dribble handoff, you know, kind of big dribbling that. And handoff is more of a stationary kind of pass and chase type stuff. I think if you can try to blow up pass and chase, you're in a good spot. Be aggressive with that. DHOs are a little harder to do.
So we're trying to cancel the get, so to speak, in terms of that.
Yeah, exactly. If you can just, as soon as you pass it, get into the body and just push him over the top and make it hard for that pass back. I think that puts you in a good spot, because if you go under that, it's just the big is basically sitting there, and you can just kind of hand it off and re-screen you, and you kind of get stuck behind. I think it's easier to go under on like dribble handoffs, because both people come in with speed, so it's harder to stop behind.
So, and if it becomes a stagger dribble handoff, or even in a stagger situation, I'm imagining it's a similar thing, except for the first screen. Generally, we always want to chase the first, and then the second becomes a decision in terms of fastest route.
Yeah, you want to chase the first and fastest route the second. You know, people will get tricky, or when like the ball start on one side, they reverse it into a, you know, pin down kind of DHO. At that time, it might be few, you know, kind of low man at, you know, one side of the court, have to get back to you, man. You might not be able to chase that pin down. And then at that point, you're just fastest route everywhere, just trying to get back to the basketball. But if you can, yeah, stagger DHOs is, you know, chase the first one and fastest route on the second. Obviously, there's some scouting report stuff with that. You know, some guys you're going to chase no matter what out of everything. And be very physical with them, because they can just really shoot it from behind. But that's a hard shot for most people.
Man, just incredible insights and incredible depth of sharing here. Thank you, Max. But before we go, like, let's help coaches understand a little bit more about you, the person, and you know, from France, and obviously, you know, Chris Beard and the experience there, and now in the NBA. Just talk a little bit about that basketball career that developed from your time in France to now.
Yeah, it's been a great ride so far. You know, I've kind of been lucky to get around the right people. I got set up with Chris Beard very early, kind of in his head coaching career back in Division II, and then the great thing there was that in Division II you don't have much help. So first day on the job, I was doing video, play development, scouting, about everything a coach can do. So and I was, you know, sitting with Coach Beard and watching film till 2 a.m. It was just me and him. So just kind of soaking up that knowledge every day. That was kind of a great starter for me. And obviously, we moved from there, got to Texas Tech, went all the way to the Final Four. And then at that point, I was, I kind of wanted to look at something different. It wasn't always my goal to be in the NBA, but doors kind of open, and it's just something you can't really turn down. Just love the pro game, it's just all about basketball. So here right now, and obviously a big fan of the international game as well, just because of my background. So if I had the choice, I watch the EuroLeague game over anything else.
That's great. And obviously French basketball as well. I mean, look out world. I mean, obviously there's always been good, quality at the top, but, the depth and the quality has just grown and grown, hasn't it?
Yeah, great talent. I think it keeps getting better. There's a really good few classes here coming up. So I think we're right where we want to be. It's a really good country as far as teaching, and obviously European countries with fundamentals and things like that. And we got a great mix of fundamentals and athleticism, which make kind of our reservoir of talent pretty deep.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, Max, thanks so much for sharing the game. This was tremendous.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. Enjoyed it.